Universities should be legally responsible for students' mental health needs. This is according to a former health minister.
Sir Norman Lamb says lives are being put at risk because some universities are not keeping track of waiting lists for counselling. His comments come as an inquest opens into the death of Kira Thacker, a student at Liverpool University who took her own life last year.
This week is Mental Health Week around the world. A person commits suicide every 40 seconds, and today
More than half the children with mental health problems in Essex may not be getting the specialist care they need.
I'd like to draw a distinction between mental health and mental illnesses, because we all have mental health, so some of our ensuring we look after our mental health is really important. Most people, for most of the time, have good mental health. We can look after that in many different ways, by ensuring we take exercise, we eat well, we have good relationships, we understand what's going on with our emotions. But also, our life is hard, so lots of us will struggle with mental ill health in all sorts of different ways, and there are lots of different sorts of mental illness. So I think there's lots of things that are important, particularly when you're young, is as you grow up to understand about emotions. And not all ill health is linked to emotions, but often our emotions are very powerful and very strong. And when we're experiencing strong emotions, we can often feel scared, and it can affect our mental health. And sometimes, although our emotions are there, they can be an exaggeration of what's actually going on. There's all sorts of ways to get help with our mental health. One of the most important things is to be connected, to keep connected to those people around you who you trust, who you can talk to. They can be people within your family, your extended family, your friendship networks, and also within schools and colleges. There's all sorts of people you can talk to when you feel perhaps your mental health isn't as good as you'd like it to be. Often sharing that you're struggling is a really helpful step to ensuring that your mental health can improve. And it takes courage to seek help when you feel that you're struggling with your mental health. So places you could go if you felt you needed additional support with your mental health. Online there's some useful services including Kooth and the Big White Wall. You could also phone the Samaritans or Childline who can support you. And in Colchester there's an early intervention service which you could be referred to through NELFT, NELFT. Their access and referral to them is available online. And those are kind of services to go to when you don't know who else to. In your school or college, you can get support with making a referral or even just chatting to somebody. And that might be actually what you need to get help right now, is just to talk to somebody who will listen to what you're struggling with. If you're struggling with perhaps some low mood or anxious feelings for a long period of time, or sleeplessness, then it's sensible to go and see your GP, who can also refer you and provide you with some help and support. We all have mental health, but poor mental health and struggling with our mental health can happen at any age. Certainly I work mainly with adolescents, with young people, and that's a particularly tricky time because there's so much change going on, a particularly rapid stage of development, and young people's understanding of life and their emotions and their physical development, their emotional development, their sexual development, and all those things have a huge impact on mental health. Likewise, all the changes that go on through growing up through that age of sort of 10 to 25 are so great, and as human beings we struggle with change. And so many changes happen to young people, both in their physical environment, with changing from one school to another, or one college to another, or one relationship to another, family breakdowns and things like that, as well as what's going on within their own actual physical and emotional development is so huge that during adolescence, young people, particularly can face some real challenges with their mental health.
Yes, I do believe that mental health is a very important topic that needs to be discussed more, especially recently throughout the breaks in medical stuff that we have found out about new different types of mental health illnesses and how we can battle mental health as a whole. I do think it is a very important thing that is just as important as your physical well-being and your social well-being. In some aspects, yes, I do believe some people are taken more seriously than others. I think it's very dependent on where you come from and where you came from. If you were in a severe abusive relationship or abusive household, you're more likely to be believed with your mental health. But if you have a stable home, stable friendships, you're less likely to be believed, because people will seem to think, oh, your life is perfect, why are you depressed? You have no reason to be depressed or anxious or have any other form of mental health. But I do think it is getting better, but we do need to recognise people more and be a lot more less judgmental, be more compassionate and open to people. I think especially with men, it's a lot harder for men to be taken seriously. I think a lot of it is to do with the still stereotypical men don't cry and they need to be the strong ones, and whereas women are more likely to be believed, not just with mental health but in many other aspects. And also with women, you have your social circle. With men, if you tell them that you have a bad day, they'll just laugh and they'll make jokes about you. But if you're a girl, 9 times out of 10, your social group will come to you straight away and they'll do anything they can for you. But I think men need that sort of structure definitely a lot more. I think the media, it's a tricky one, because the media do what they do to get views. That's what they care about. They don't necessarily care about people as a whole. I feel like as long as they're making their bosses happy, it doesn't really matter, unless they are a mental health professional or have suffered mental health themselves. A lot of them don't really care. But I do feel that the media does need to show it in a better light. And for example, like in films and stuff, a lot of people that watched the new Joker film refused to watch it and walked out, because it was depicting mental health so well, and though it shows a man that suffers with it so severely, and a lot of people I don't think quite like that, because it's too based in reality. And I think that's what people need to realise, that it is based reality, it is a real thing that people suffer with, and it's something that it's never going to be completely non-stigmatised. Same with anything, same with race, same with sexism. There's always going to be people that believe it, and that's just, I think, the best thing we can do regarding to mental health is to destigmatise it as much as possible and have people as accepting of it as we can, but it's never going to be 100% because we don't live in a perfect world.
Not only is security a concern, the Joker raises issues about mental illness. For more, we're joined by Dr. Zeev Ezra Cohen. He's the medical director at Principium Psychiatry, LLC, and clinical assistant professor of psychiatry at Cornell Medical College. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Hi, great to be here.
Great to have you. So the film does spotlight mental health awareness, but it also explores a path for those that may have a mental illness that's not addressed. Can that connection of mental health and evil villainry even connect?
I don't think so. I think that may be an unfortunate aspect of this movie, and I haven't seen it. But if it is drawing a connection between mental illness and mass violence, I think that's unfortunate, because the research does indicate that as a whole, people with mental illness are no more violent than anybody else, and in fact they're more likely to be victimized by violent crime than to perpetrate it.
I think some doctors, I think it's very dependent on the doctor and the patient, because the doctor do what they think is best for the patient, and the patient may feel like they suffer with a mental health issue, but in reality they might just be having a rough patch. And I think there's a clear difference between someone who suffers from depression and someone who's just going through a rough time. Depression is constantly feeling low and depressed, and you constantly feel like you don't feel worth it anymore. And a rough patch, you might just, everyone has those periods of times where they just feel a bit sad. But I think especially nowadays, people seem to jump to the whole I'm depressed, I have anxiety a lot more quicker, but I think some doctors are just blatantly ignorant to the fact that they actually might suffer, and to a patient that might have that, I think it's best to see a professional, and not just a doctor, a mental health professional. And if they say you just seem to be having a rough time, I would see that as much more of a, you're just having a rough time, you're not depressed. But if it's a continuous thing, like after you visit the doctor, if it keeps happening, then you have to keep pushing to try and get more. Well, for most of my life, it was fine. I was just a happy person most of the time, quite bubbly. But around 9, 10, that's when I had a bad interaction and sort of repercussion with my father. He was the main instigator for me personally suffering with my own mental issues. He caused me to feel very lonely and depressed and low, and just for many years I didn't really understand what it was until I was about 13. I just thought it was normal, but then it started all hit me when I was a bit more intelligent and I could understand things better. For me, it all hit me straight at once, one after another. And if you asked me a few years ago, would I ever get in a better place, I wouldn't really believe you, but I'm not that bad anymore. I have my days, but most of the time I'm not that sad anymore. I don't have many reasons to be sad anymore. I'm quite content on where I am. I have the scars to carry, but I don't see them as a negative thing anymore. I see them as very much a positive thing that, yeah, I had a tough time, but I've moved on from that, and through countless therapy and trying medication and being properly diagnosed with anxiety depressive disorder, I am much more satisfied. I feel like that chapter of my life has been closed. I don't blame myself anymore from what happened with him, my father. I don't see myself as negative anymore. Still have my own insecurities and issues, but who doesn't have insecurities? And I feel like I'm much more in a better place now. I'm not gonna go back to where I was with self-harm or anything. There's no need to do that anymore. It's just not enough pain anymore to feel like I need to. I'm very happy with who I am, and there are things I would change, but I have the people that I need. I don't need anybody else. I'm very, very proud of where I came from, and I wouldn't change anything because that's what made me the person I am. At first, when it was just the school counsellor and that, I didn't think much of it. I didn't think she was as helpful as it could be, because for me, just one-on-one talking doesn't help, because I don't like talking. I would much rather do things practically. With my last counsellor and some lady that I have now who helps me with anything that I need, it's practical. I do practical stuff with them. I went for my counsellor, we did practical activities. I used Play-Doh to make things that represented different feelings, and we spoke about them. I could talk, and I just felt like the way that she done it was much more useful to me, because I'm more practically based. If you sat me in front of a book and told me to read it, I wouldn't understand, but if I could do it physically, I would much more intake it all, and I feel that sort of counselling is much more useful for me. Not really, not anymore. I think nowadays I'm very able to, if I feel like I'm having a bad day, I can just cope with it myself. I don't need many strategies or anything like that anymore, because for me, though, that time is done. I don't need any strategies anymore. I can cope by myself, and I can be sure that nothing bad will come of it. I would recommend, especially pictures are good. Drawing pictures of how you feel, use Play-Doh, use anything practical you can physically make how you feel. Even, it doesn't have to mean anything. it could be the worst drawing you've ever done, it could be the worst thing you've ever made, but if that represents sadness, anxious, depressed, if it represents anything like that, then that's important. I also feel like journal, personally for me, didn't work. I didn't like that sort of stuff, but journals can work for quite a few people. Therapy obviously is always a good thing if you feel like it's useful. CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, is very, very useful because it changes how you think. Instead of just talking about how you feel, it will challenge. You might think, oh, I am the worst person in the world, and in cognitive behavioural therapy they'll say, what evidence is there to show that you are this? And then they'll ask you, what evidence is there to show you're not? And it's kind of like, oh, it kind of makes you realise that you're not as bad as what you think you are.
So personally, there are a lot of different things that I think can help promote mental health, or positive mental health, including one of the best things is talking to people, and that can be friends, that can be family, that can be just someone who you might have as a mentor as well, because sometimes some of the hardest things is not only recognising about your mental health, but also just talking to people about it, because then it's getting it out there, and also you're just working through and processing it more as well, as sometimes you can feel that it's just you in this situation, and it's not. Mental health can affect so many different people and at so many different times with so many different experiences. Also, such a key thing is rest and recuperation. So this can be ways of meditation or prayer, or even something like mindfulness. It's finding maybe a space that can be important to you and just using that as a really calm and just gentle experience. So if you find it could be in your house, or it could be if you like going on walks, it could be a place in a wood where you might just want to be alone to just gather your thoughts and process them as well. There can be different things like reading books as well, doing things that specifically give you joy and make you feel like you're having fun. So that can also be being with other people and surrounding yourself with others, having a laugh, maybe doing something like karaoke or singing, or going to an exercise class as well. So exercise can just have such a positive effect, as that releases endorphins that can just make you feel brighter and happier. But also it's recognizing that sometimes being still is also such a key aspect, as just having time to rest and let your body calm down and settle is such a big thing, because our bodies are meant to run on certain hours and certain times, but it also needs time to recover. And sleep can also be such a big thing, making sure that you have enough sleep. I mean, everyone can function on different hours of sleep, so there's no key set time of how long you should be able to sleep for or how long you can sleep for, but just knowing what your limits are and not trying to test them, because the body needs time to heal. And in this such crazy, chaotic culture that we live in, where we're always meant to be doing something and meant to be running around or working, our brains are constantly in use, that just taking time to just sit and reflect just gives the body that time to heal and that time to recover. Things like going on a walk as well, just being surrounded by nature and breathing. It might sound like a ridiculous thing, but having that space to just breathe and fully relax can be so important and crucial. as well as there are different services as well that you can go to. So that's very much focusing on you, and if you want to have something personal, but if you're struggling further and not finding something that can help you, there are online services that you can contact, like Kooth. You can speak to the pastoral team in either your school or college, and there'll be someone there. You can even go and speak to your GP, and they can refer you on to places where you might be able to seek extra help. So strategies, I would say the best ones are just could be journaling. So if you're someone who enjoys writing or enjoys doing different things, especially if you're an avid person who likes writing and likes taking notes or processing things, then writing something down can be a great experience, because not only are you getting it on paper, but that can also be something that you then reflect back on. So if you're feeling a similar way, then you can refer back to it and go, oh, well, I was feeling the same way as on this particular day, and that can subsequently help you, because you think that, oh, it's not so bad that I'm feeling like this because I felt like this before. And then you can think, oh, but perhaps the day after you did that journaling, you felt a bit better, because it's just that sense of release. So I would say finding ways of release, whether that's, as I say, journaling, songwriting, whether that's exercise. So if you're a physical person and you don't necessarily like writing, then exercise, or finding a Zumba class or a Pilates class or even a yoga class can be a great way to just be still and relax, because that can be the way that your body needs time to heal and time to reflect. And that can be a key moment, because as you're exercising, so like doing the Zumba or the yoga, that can be your time to process what it is you're feeling. But as I say, also, it does release those positive endorphins that can help you. Yeah, so sometimes, so you can do things, so there's been a lot about mindfulness recently, or even prayer, and it's just that sense of being, where it doesn't have to be any particular thing, you don't have to be thinking about a particular thing. So mindfulness, you can be focusing on words or actions, but sometimes for me, I can find that even if I'm just counting, so you count maybe up to 10 with breathing, and then you slowly count down from 10 to 1, that even that you're slowing your heart rate down, and you're just taking a time out and a step back from, we live this so fast-paced life, that actually, as you're taking time to be out and come out of that chaotic rat race of a life, you're giving your body time to process, and you're giving your body time to rest and recuperate and just be. And you're also giving time to be in yourself, because sometimes we're not allowed to, or we don't have time to process how we're feeling, or even recognize in ourselves what we're doing. And so taking that time out and taking that time to breathe, to be one with yourself, can be such an important thing, because you're recognizing that actually who I am is who I am, and it's okay. You don't always have to be surrounded by people.
I think that, so mental health, I think, is a really broad kind of topic, and I think it's quite often kind of overlooked or not taken as seriously as maybe as it should be. But it's kind of difficult, I think, because there's lots and lots of different approaches, I think, to thinking about mental health. So I think there's kind of, there's one way of looking at it in the sense that, some people might think, okay, if a person's got like a mental health problem, it could make it really difficult for them to kind of do things that other people who haven't might be able to do that. But then another way of looking at it, and this is how I prefer to look at it, is that people just have to have different approaches to things. And everyone has to do things differently because everyone's different. So I do try to think of it as kind of a really broad, open, I can't really think of the best word to use, but just a situational thing. Like every single person in society has got something different going on with themselves, and it's important to bear that in mind, basically, I think, when talking to people, when we're dealing with people. Yeah, I have. I've had quite a lot of experiences because I used to work as a police officer, and so a big part of my job was as a beat officer, a neighbourhood beat officer. So I would be out in the community every day, meeting new people, members of the community, and also being a police officer, often you end up going to situations where people are having a crisis or there's a problem of some kind. So I think, lots and lots of different occasions where I've been helping people, trying to help people who are having some sort of a crisis or something that they need some help with. So yeah, I would say I've got quite a lot of experience of meeting people and speaking to people who are having some mental health difficulties. Yeah, I don't think it should really be up to me to manage that situation. I don't really kind of like to think of it as that word. Like it's not. It shouldn't be me managing a person, but more just being aware and understanding that everyone I speak to, like any day of the week, there could be something in the background going on there in terms of a mental health difficulty, and you just never know what people are struggling with. It's something that people, I think, often aren't comfortable to talk about, but then again, it's not necessarily up to me to pry into that situation that people are in. So I wouldn't ever try and manage that. It would be more, perhaps, if it was kind of clear that someone was having a difficult situation, maybe I would kind of offer to, or sort of ask them to let me know if there's anything that I can do to help them, to make them feel more comfortable with that kind of situation. But ultimately, I try to treat everyone equally, and I think that's really, really important. And I wouldn't approach a person and think, okay, this person's got some sort of mental health issue going on here. I'm going to treat them differently. I'm going to treat them as if they're not as capable as other people. I'm going to try and treat them equally. Now, sometimes I think treating people equally, it doesn't necessarily mean treating everyone the same, but sometimes you have to speak to people in a different kind of way. It totally depends on the situation. But I just try to be fair to everyone, basically. Well, I think there's, again, a really broad spectrum within the media of how mental health is portrayed. I think things are getting a lot better now. I think, in recent years, mental health has been portrayed in a better way. I think there used to be, 10, 15, 20 years ago in the media, mental health was seen as a problem, and there was a lot of fear-mongering, I think, so there would be kind of the media, maybe like, I don't know, if you think about documentaries or soap operas or dramas, those sorts of things, and films, often a person who had a mental health issue would be portrayed as if they were dangerous, and I don't think that was helpful, because, of course, I mean, there are dangerous people out there, but most people who are having a mental health difficulty aren't dangerous. They're not any more dangerous to you than someone who isn't having a mental health issue at that point. And I think the media now is trying to be a lot more responsible in general to